The reason you remember the past isn't to make an objectively accurate record of the past. It's so that you can use the information in the past to prepare you for the future. And your mind won't leave you alone unless that has happened. So if you've encountered something that's negative and you don't know why and you don't know what to do about it if that happens again in the future, then that will stay with you. And I think one of the things it does too is it increases your overall physiological load. Because if everything that you've done has resulted in catastrophe, then you're somewhere insanely dangerous, and you should be like a prey animal that's ready to dart in any direction. And so you can go back and you can find out where you have holes in the structure through which you're viewing the world. That's one way of looking at it, and you can sew those things up. And that's in some sense, that's what you're doing in psychotherapy. Partly it's exposure to things you're afraid of and disgusted by and are likely to avoid. That's a huge chunk of it. But if you go back into your past and you start talking those things through, it's really the same thing. Freud, of course, was always, when he was doing his free association process with his clients, he'd find that if he just let them talk, that their speech would circle until it hit a place like that, where they were confused and doubtful, and then their speech would sort of wander around that, and then they'd have an emotional expression that was a consequence of that. He thought the emotional expression was what was curative. It was cathartic in his terms. But later, James Pennebaker, he found that if you brought college students into the lab and you had them write for 15 minutes 3 times over 3 days about the worst thing that had ever happened to them, or the worst thing they ever did, if I remember correctly, they got worse in the short term but better in the long run. For example, they went and visited the doctor less, and markers of their physical health improved, because they basically calmed down. Once they had gone through the negative memory and sorted it out properly and told a properly articulated story and figured out how to deal with it, then their physiology calmed down. And so then they weren't as stressed, they weren't producing as much cortisol, and so cortisol suppresses your immune function, and so they were more likely to stay healthy. The best way to teach people critical thinking is to teach them to write. The best thing you can do is teach people to write, because there's no difference between that and thinking. And one of the things that just blows me away about universities is that no one ever tells students why they should write something. It's like, well, you have to do this assignment. Well, why are you writing? Well, you need the grade. It's like, no, you need to learn to think. Because thinking makes you act effectively in the world. Thinking makes you win the battles you undertake. And those could be battles for good things. If you can think and speak and write, you are absolutely deadly. Nothing can get in your way. So that's why you learn to write. It's like, and I can't believe that people aren't just told that. It's like, it's the most powerful weapon you can possibly provide someone with. And if you can formulate your arguments coherently, and make a presentation, if you can speak to people, if you can lay out a proposal, God, people give you money, they give you opportunities, you have influence. That's what you're at university for. Yeah, teach people to be articulate, because that's the most dangerous thing you can possibly be. So, and that's motivating if people know that. It's like, well, why are you learning to write? Because here's your sword, here's your M16, right? Here's your bulletproof vest. Like, you learn how to use them. But it's an endless mystery to me why that isn't made self-evident. So that's the sort of thing that can drive you mad trying to sort out. It's like there's a conspiracy to bring people into the education system to make them weaker. It's possible that you're resentful because people really have been poking at you too much and taking cheap shots at you and oppressing you. But what that means is that you've got some things to say that you haven't been willing to say or don't know how to say. Right? You can't stand up for yourself properly. And in order to do that, you have to grow some teeth and be willing to use them. And again, that's something that might violate your morality, because you might say, well, I shouldn't be able to bite people. And the thing is, yes, you should be able to bite people hard. And if you're able to bite them, then generally you don't have to. But they need to know that you can, because otherwise, especially people who are badly socialized, they'll just keep encroaching on you and encroaching on you and encroaching on you and encroaching on you until you you put up a wall. Like someone who's really well put together won't do that, you know, because they're sophisticated. But if you run into people who only have boundaries because other people impose them on them and you won't do it, you're going to be the bullied one in the office, for example. You're not going to get a raise. People aren't going to credit you with your own work. Other people are going to take credit for it. You know, and you're going to go home angry because you're doing your best and you're trying to get along with everyone and nothing ever goes your way. Well, it's because you're a pushover. And you think that's good because you confuse harmlessness with morality. It's not right. Just because you can't do any damage doesn't mean you're moral. It just means you don't have the capability for mayhem. And that makes you a pushover. You get that horrible side of yourself integrated so it's up there where you can use it. Because otherwise you're dangerous. You can't say no to people and you'll go along with the crowd. And then if the crowd does something particularly pathological, which it's liable to do, you won't be able to resist it. You won't have the strength of character. And so then you'll fall prey to crowd pathology. And it'll be because you're too agreeable.